Exit algorithms. Scale smarter. Sell stronger.
Welcome to Exit Algorithms, the podcast where we decode what it really takes to unlock growth, streamline operations, and prepare your business for a high-value exit. I'm your host, Pete Vera, and today I'm excited to introduce Hiten Sonpal. He's a computer engineer turned robotics executive who's built bomb disposal robots for the military at iRobot, led the development of the Roomba lawnmower called Mobot, became president of Electric Sheep Robotics, and is now CEO of Rise Robotics, a company that ran the #1 Reg CF raise of 2025. Hiten, super excited to have you here. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Pete. So excited to be here.
Yeah, I can't wait to pick your brain a little more. I've done a good amount of research myself, but yeah, there's a lot to unpack here. Do you mind sharing? We can start off. Just share a bit about your background. You know, where are you from, and maybe some of your career journey and how you ended up at Rise.
Sure. Yeah, I was initially born and raised in India, came to the United States to study computer engineering. And then after I graduated, worked for a consulting firm developing electronics. And one of the clients that we had, one of the projects that I was working on had, it was like a three-person team. DARPA was funding it. iRobot was the prime, and we were doing the development. And the robots we were working on were called PackBots. They were supposed to be soldier portable systems. And then 9/11 happened, and the robots that I was working on, the prototypes got deployed at ground zero. And at that point, I decided that I wanted to find a way to work for iRobot because they were doing cool stuff, saving lives. And within a few years, I found my opportunity, moved to Boston, and joined them. And then I had two separate careers at iRobot. First 8 years in their government business, where we shipped 1,200 robots, saved well over 1,200 lives, both on the US side and also civilians in Iraq and Afghanistan. And then I spent another 8 years in their consumer business, where teams that I led generated across 20 products.
Wow. Yeah, very very impressive, and so neat. How was that transition? You know, coming from India to corporate America.
Well, I came as a student, right, which is when it's the easiest, but because when you join a university, you're a customer, and so everyone at a university is excited to make the lives of students easier, and there's a support system, and so on and so forth. And so the acclimate the acclimatization to U.S. culture was easy. Also, one other thing that made it very easy to decide to stay in the United States was that uh, it felt like more of a meritocracy than the India I grew up in at the time. Things are changing in India as well. They keep changing, and India's become more of a meritocracy because you can see that in the growth rate and so on. But at the time, the United States was a breath of fresh air, and I was excited about um, using my skills and my abilities to be successful.
Yeah, no, definitely, and you made the most of the opportunity clearly.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would love to hear also about your time at iRobot. I read, you know, their COVID did not treat the company well, and you were along the ride for that part of the company's history, right?
That's right. So we had finished the Roomba for your lawn, the product that you talked about, and we were getting it ready to launch. All the production pieces had been done, and we had the final sort of validation units, and we completed the validation, and we were ready to hit go. And we were asked to pause, and then two-thirds of my team was let go um, because of COVID. And what happened because of COVID is that companies that were building consumer products couldn't get them from China initially because the virus was spreading there. And then um, once the virus came to the United States, even if they had product, they couldn't sell them in retail stores because stores were shut down. And then Amazon, which is one of the biggest channels for e-tail at the time, and still is, right, um, was only shipping diapers and bottled water initially because people were staying at home, and so they needed those essentials, and the grocery stores were closed and all that stuff. So it was a very difficult time for iRobot, and they had to make some tough decisions, and they decided to protect the core of the business, the Roomba. And I happened to be leading an expansion project of the business, so that part got cut off, and so or paused. And uh, so that's when I decided to try something different and get into entrepreneurship. I asked iRobot if I could try to see if I could salvage the project through external funding, and they gave me the permission to go do that. And so I looked around and spoke to a lot of VCs, and that was kind of my first taste of entrepreneurship. And in the end, I was able to put something together, but the deal just never came through. And I found myself a free agent, joined a couple of startups, and then in that process, found myself as CEO or president of now the third startup that I'm running.
Got it. Wow. Yeah. Quite the journey. Definitely. It seems like a blessing in disguise almost with iRobot there. Were there any lessons you learned from your time at iRobot that you've taken with you to your new ventures?
Yes, I mean, there were a lot of things about iRobot that were incredible. I met so many incredible leaders in the company. Colin Angle, of course, who created iRobot, Helen Greiner, who was also a co-founder. She then went on to start two other companies. She was actually one of the people that I reached out to when I wanted to spin out um, the Roomba for your lawn business, right? It was called Terra. That was the product. And I actually asked her to be CEO because I figured that she'd be a better fundraiser than I would be, and I was right. Um,
Mhm.
to trust in her and kind of her instincts. Um, Rodney Brooks was the CTO of iRobot. He ran the one of the labs at MIT, and he's since then started two companies himself. Um, there was Christian Serta. He was the COO briefly, and then he became CEO of SimpliSafe. Um, there are several other folks who gone on to start their own companies. And so iRobot has been fantastic in terms of developing talent, robotics talent in the Boston area when the company was doing well. So these were all people who were getting experience as the company was growing and then found opportunities. But I think, and now the company isn't doing as well, but all the folks who've left are going to see this ecosystem. So I think 5 to 10 years from now, Boston is going to be just an, a tremendous place for robotics companies because there's all this talent out there that has been part of a successful organization, understands what it takes to make things work. Um, iRobot also had an incredible culture. It was a family environment, and there really were no jerks in the company, right? They did a really good job of hiring, which I thought was incredible. And within that master culture, the sort of the superset culture, I was able to build a subculture for my teams that kind of built on that, which was fantastic as a leader to start with something that was already good and then try to get it to be great. So that was an opportunity I had as an emerging leader in the organization. And finally, I joined iRobot before it went public. And so after the
Mhm.
company went public, I was able to, again, as an immigrant, not coming with the United States with a lot of money, being part of iRobot, having it go public, created the opportunity for me to buy my first home, put the down payment down on it. So I have nothing but positive things to say about my time there. It was just incredible.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome, and it's great you had a good experience. Sounds like a good launching pad, for the rest of your career. Um,
Yes, for me and many others. Yeah.
yeah, I'm excited to see really the beginning and years to come where Rise will be. As you grow the company, I'm curious. What is some of your strategies for growth? Being such a capital intensive uh, business, right? How have you decided when to hire new employees or take on funding to for growth? I'd love to hear your philosophy around that.
Yeah. So one of the things about running a business or a startup is that you have to make sure you stay in business, right? The only way you fail, if you found something you believe in, you have some unique tech, you have some moats, and you have a big market, you just need enough at bats to be successful. So the first thing is being fiscally responsible in the business and making sure that you continue to have chances to keep playing. Because the only way you lose is if you run out of money. So the first step when you're losing money is to make sure, how can I do this in the most capital efficient way possible? So when I joined the company, the one of the things I did was kind of review the strategy of the business. And strategy to a lot of folks seems like this ephemeral thing, but the essence of it is resource allocation. Where are we going to put our money? And for me, and also for the board, right, our goal was to get products into market fast. And so what I did was I basically looked at, there's a model called the Three Horizons model. It's an outdated model that McKinsey uses or used to get to convince companies to invest more in the future. They basically said, the model said you need to spend 60% of your research and development dollars in things that you're going to get to market in 6 months to 2 years. You need to spend another, call it 35% in things that are going to go to market between 2 and 5 years. But then beyond that 5 year horizon, you need to put in 5 to 10%. You can't ignore that, because if you ignore that, those 5 years are going to come by very quickly and then you won't have a product line. And so that model is used to convince people to invest in the future. When I joined Rise, it was backwards. We were spending a lot of money on things that were going to be coming out to market 5 years. The process of getting them into market involved a B to B to B process, which would just take a long time. And so what I asked the team to do is to stop working on projects that were going to take that long, and instead took all the chips and put them on Horizon One, which is we're only going to work on things that get into market in the next 6 months to 2 years. So that's been our focus. And for anything that was longer, we insisted that our customers put some skin in the game. So if our customers weren't willing to put in investment dollars and joint development to get projects across the finish line, it just didn't make sense for a startup to take investor money, spend 5 years on something only to have the customer go through a reorganization, as an example, which large companies do every 18 months or so. Go through a reorganization, or your champion to retire or leave, and then all of a sudden you don't have anything, right? So focusing on the near term was a big part of what I did. And then the other part was just making sure that we were spending efficiently. And so the team now is actually smaller by 20% than I took over, but our productivity is between 50 to 100% higher than it was when I took over.
Wow. Yeah, that's powerful, man. Great, big takeaway there. Really great insight. What was your part of your strategy to make your team so productive?
Well, there's just normal attrition where you have people that leave, and every time that happens, you get a chance to reassess how you want to run the business. One of our biggest losses was a program manager that we had in the company, and she was incredible. She was just making so many things happen, juggling so many balls, and she got an opportunity that we could not, to run a portfolio, which we didn't have, right? So she was running programs of programs. Um, so we can really match that. And she left, and we had to figure out what we were going to do. And there was also a gap in engineers. And so what I decided to do was, let's see if we can run this without a project manager. Even though we had a superstar leave, a company, our size, less than 20 people, typically doesn't have a program manager. So, how the founders somehow managed to do all of this stuff in other companies. So let's see if we can do something different. And in that process, I ended up cutting 40 hours of meetings, because the project manager had to meet with all the people, and the project manager had to meet with me and some of the team leads, and there had to be discussions and things had to get sorted out. So that was the first layer of the onion. And then I solicited feedback from the team as to how we could improve things. I'd say 10 to 15 man hours of meetings since then. And then we created a much more transparent system. And so all of that happened because we just tried to focus on making communications better. And we had this one person who was at the center of all of those communications, and she was doing an outstanding job. But by streamlining the rest of the communications, we were able to get back to the same place, but now we had one free headcount where we could go get another engineer. So we increased the velocity of the organization. We didn't lose anything because we were able to find ways to stitch that. And a lot of the reporting and so on that a project manager would do, we just have to now do without. So we try to make things more visible. We try to have
Mm.
daily stand-up meetings where we get the team unstuck and we move things around. Um, now that I and now I'm more embedded in the business, and so I can see that requests I make that should take 2 days are taking 2 weeks, and I can sort of pause the team and say, okay, this I thought it was easy when I made the request, but it looks like it's taking too long. What do you recommend as an MVP that we could put in for now? And then once we get customer buy-in, we can come back and finish that feature. So things like that to keep the momentum going. Um, and so uh, that's happened is as people leave, we kind of reassess and we say, how can we do this better? And then not in this particular case when the project manager left, but in most instances, the people that leave are the ones that are in the bottom half of the organization, and the new people we bring in are always in the top half. So we just set a high bar. So whether people leave or they come, the organization's productivity increases.
Yeah. Awesome. Wow. Thank you for that detailed response. A lot of good takeaways there. I love that you get your team's feedback. I think that's huge. Um, and slashing meetings. I was gonna dive into that a little more. How do you um, not have chaos when you're used to having these meetings? You mentioned some communication channels. Was there any software that you implemented, or what's your strategy to reduce those meetings and maintain the communication?
Yeah, so some of it requires like maybe it's just a little bit of introspection. So I'll take a maybe a step back and talk about like project managers, right? Why do you have project managers in an organization? You have project managers in an organization because your organization is queued up. You've got people that have multiple tasks and they're working on multiple things. And then you need project managers to take projects and push them through the organization, right? Because they're solving for time and then they're trying to find out, okay, how do I get this done? And at each of those areas, they're basically pushing the project through the organization. Um, if a CEO can take more responsibility and start pulling the projects out of the organization, right? It's a very different mode of things operating. And the pulling is not necessarily me, but me connecting the team to customer inputs. Like the customer has a show on such and such date. What do we need to hit that show? And let's pull that. And okay, then the team says at a high level to me, without going into like a lot of planning, well, if you really want us to hit that, then these other two projects that you have us working on need to be low priority. And then the only thing I can do is say, yes, I accept. And then we've cut the amount of log jamming that happens strategically. So it's not that you have project managers trying to push things through the log jam in an organization. You just eliminated the log jam by basically saying, I'm shutting down these four streets and we're not going to get that traffic in here. And we're going to let these other four streets just run free, right? And that's how you get better throughput to an organization. It's like getting rid of those stoplights and right, closing down some lanes, reducing the amount of traffic.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. It's a great protocol. Yeah, reducing bottlenecks. Man, yeah, I think that can apply to a lot of businesses. So thank you, thank you for sharing.
That was no one's asking that question before. Thank you for asking.
All good. It was clear. Is there any exciting projects you're working on? I know our listeners, a lot of them have a logistics focus. I saw your belt drawlic system. I'd love for if you could touch on that a little bit, and so the ROI behind from implementing that.
Yeah, so our core technology is a replacement for hydraulics, right? And we call it belt hydraulics because it's built from belts. And I'll just take a few seconds to kind of explain our inspiration. Our inspiration is from human muscles. When you think about how muscles work, even when we're pushing, we're pulling things. There are fibers inside the body that are pulling and contracting, even to get a pushing force. And because we have that kind of mechanism, it gives us three things. It gives us speed, so humans can move their arms very quickly as opposed to these robots that take time to spool up. Um, and they are very efficient. You imagine the amount of food we eat versus these battery packs that have to get put on these humanoid robots to try and do anything. Um, and then they're very durable. Muscles last a lifetime, and most mechanical equipment fails well before then. And I imagine I took those muscles and I replaced them with bladders. And I said, every time I want to move my arm, I'm going to pump blood on one side of the arm and try to push it open. Well, that's going to be very slow moving because I'm trying to move all this liquid. And then the pressure is going to push against every interface. and there's going to be wear and tear inside the body because of all the pressure that you're applying. And think about the inefficiency of moving fluid back and forth just to get an arm to move. It just feels like a lot of waste. Well, that's where hydraulic systems are today. And so with our hydraulic technology, we've basically taken all the advantages of muscles and we use pulling forces instead of pushing forces to make things happen. And so our tech is 3 times more efficient than hydraulics. It's 3 times more efficient and it's 3 times more durable. And that should come as no surprise. So I just explained to you the difference in the mechanism. Inherently, hydraulics are going to leak because of all that pressure, and they are going to be slow and they're going to be inefficient. Um, so these advancements have a lot of applicability across the board. We have 3 business areas. Your listeners in logistics will really care about what we're doing for the Air Force and also for our liftgate. So I'll start with the liftgate business. We partnered with a company called Anthony Liftgates. They build hydraulic lift gates, and they came to us and said, "Hey, we think your technology could be a good fit for building a hydraulic free lift gate because the biggest challenge with lift gates is the hydraulic systems failing." And they're kind of a unique beast, and installers don't want to install them. They don't want hydraulic oil in their shop. And it's different from the rest of the system. The reliability is a lot lower than the trailer or the semi tractor. And so we could match the reliability of the other systems by doing that. And so we entered into a partnership with them, and we built a hydraulic liftgate that has no hydraulic systems in it, that runs faster than a hydraulic system, that doesn't have maintenance requirements like a hydraulic system, um, and really doesn't even have grease requirements. So we built what we think is the maintenance-free liftgate. And from a business area, why that's attractive is that 15% of liftgates in large fleets get retired every year. So it's almost like a SaaS business. Once you acquire a customer, you have them for life. They'll be replacing 1/7 of their fleet. In our case, probably 1/10 of their fleet after we get through the first set because our systems will just last that long. But once we acquire a customer, we essentially have them for life. So it's very easy to grow this business. We just need to acquire customers and rack and stack them. And the same sales team can grow the business without you needing to grow the sales team because your customers aren't really going to go back to a hydraulic system once they use a hydraulic free system. Like I don't know anyone that has a hybrid or an electric car and is saying, "Oh, I'm looking forward to going back to my gas guzzler." It's just not happening.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah, and so it lasts a lot longer. It's faster. Um, is there, yeah, like, is there a upfront cost, maybe investment they have to consider?
Yes, it is. It is a little bit more expensive to start. Between I'd say 15 to 30% more expensive, depending on what they're buying today. But the ROI, if you think about the speed and the productivity, is 6 months. If you just think about maintenance, it's roughly 2 to 3 years. Lift gates last 7 years, so you can get it back in half the life of the lift gate. But then there are other benefits too. We're very smooth. There's no jerking. If the hydraulic system, if your lift gate gets jammed a little bit on one side, then that side isn't going to move, and the platform goes out of level, and then suddenly the other hydraulic cylinder gives because it's basically powered through the whatever the thing is, and the operator is experiencing all this stuff. We don't have any of that because we're an electric system. We can close the loop. We know exactly the position of the lift gate. And if this thing is stuck, we're going to slow down the other side. We're going to gently increase the pressure. And as soon as it gives, we're going to back off on the electric power that we're applying because we can control that in milliseconds or even less compared to a hydraulic system where the pressure can build in the hoses and the pump and so on and so forth. So we're able to keep the system completely level, going up and down. It's very smooth, soft start, soft stop, no banging, clanging sounds. You can operate this lift gate at night. And so for a lot of our customers, this opens up night deliveries in areas where they couldn't because the hydraulic system is going to make so much noise. And yeah, so just those are the benefits right off the top. Just like any electric system, it's silent, smooth, um, precise acceleration, and it's also lighter because we've eliminated about 150 pounds of lead acid batteries. We run on a small lithium battery because we're very efficient. Our systems are 75% efficient, the hydraulic core technology, compared to a hydraulic system, which is typically 25% efficient.
Wow.
So it allows us to save batteries, and we don't expect any battery related downtimes, which happen a lot in hydraulic lift gates because the batteries die and they kill the battery in the tractor or the truck, and now you have to come tow the machine.
Yeah. Oh, fascinating. That's awesome. Would you consider that your kind of your flagship like product, or are there your yeah? What's your plan with Rise in the next few years?
Yeah, so when I joined, the business had three areas. A few other things that as I mentioned, were long term, and so I wound those things down. Um, so when I talked about liftgates as being one business area, we're also doing work for the Pentagon. We recently won a $3 million contract extension. We're building them munitions handlers. So this is the ground equipment that's used to load aircraft that are going to run missions. And we built for them what an arm as a prototype that can lift 7,000 pounds at a 7 foot extension. 7,000 pounds being the weight of a Cybertruck or a Ford F-150 Lightning, and it can basically lift it up and like manipulate it as if it's a rag doll. It's very
Mm,
very powerful. And in fact, we were able to get that arm into the Guinness World Record book for being the world's strongest robotic arm prototype. There isn't anything stronger than that can actually manipulate 7,000 pounds at that extension. And so on this basis, after seeing the outcome of that project, we got a contract extension to turn that into a vehicle. Hope to get a production contract to sell, call it 1,500 of these over the next 5 to 10 years, which is exciting.
yeah.
Um, and that's what we've done for the Air Force. Last year, we also landed our first customer in the Army. We did a very small contract with them, but they asked us for a phase two, so we submitted that, and we're waiting to hear back from them. And then this year, we reached out to the Navy and have found a champion there, so we're continuing to expand our business at the Pentagon. And then our third area of the business is to OEMs, where we sell our core hydraulic technology. And there, I've been very mindful about staying away from sectors that I personally find exciting, like construction, because I like big boy toys, excavators, dump trucks and bulldozers. Those would be fun to get into. But that equipment gets a lot of abuse, which means that we have to do a lot of testing and qualification. Instead, what I've looked for is markets where they can meet us where we are today. And in that process, we stumbled on the oil and gas sector, and we're partnering with an OEM in that space. This is our first commercial customer. Their challenge is they're building natural gas compression pumps to deal with vapor recovery at oil wells, and their hydraulic systems foul up every 3 months. And so our technology is going to last at least 3 times as long. And they have this pain point, an acute pain point that they'd like to address today. They have money, they're willing to move, they're mid-market, which is the kind of firms that startups should really work with. And so we think this is going to be a great beachhead market for us. And then we're going to start to take on some of the more complex sectors like mining and forestry and agriculture and construction.
Awesome. Wow, that's really exciting. I can't wait to see those plans unfold. I imagine also getting those contracts helps with financing. You have the money up front versus having to raise money. I did want to get touch on that on this show. Is congratulations, by the way, the top Reg CF raise of 2025. How did you decide to go that route, crowdfunding versus venture capital?
Yeah, when I joined Rise Robotics, one of the things that was interesting is we had 1,500 followers, which is unusual for a B2B company. And I was just curious, and I asked the team, what's going on, and they shared that oftentimes a lot of the suppliers that would bring us parts and prototypes and so on would stick a head in our shop, which you can see back there. And they would get really excited about what we were doing and would ask us, hey, what is going on here? So we'd explain what we're building. And more often than not, the next question was, how can I get in on this? And at that time, we had no way for them to get in on it. Um, and then when it came time to raise money for the company, when knocking on VC doors, they were all either doing AI or humanoid robots, or were giving me very bad terms to take their money,
Mm.
which would have really affected the previous investors. So I said, you know what? We have all these people that are interested in investing in the company, but can't invest. Let's see if we can find a way to get them in. And we did some research. I had a friend who had had some success with crowdfunding. So we picked a platform, which you have to. The SEC requires that retail investors be protected, and then startups have some uh, reporting requirements that are enforced by an intermediary. So in this case, we picked WeFunder. They are the largest Reg CF platform in the United States and in the world. Really, no one else has Reg CF. And we started our campaign January of last year, and we offered really good deal terms. We offered the same terms that we offered our previous round of institutional investors,
Mm,
something very similar to that to the public. And so third parties that rate these deals rated our deal well. There's a company called King's Crowd that gave us a 4.7 star rating last year because they looked at the deal, they looked at the size of the market, they looked at the risk profile, and then they concluded that we're a good offering. And then they wrote us an investment memo that described all the reasons why they were choosing themselves to invest in the company, but also all the downsides. And we have that posted on our uh, campaign page so folks can read it and kind of get a sense of a third party's risk assessment in investing in our business. Because early startups are risky. Um, Things can go really well, but you can also lose all your money, right? Um,
yeah.
so so we did that, and so we got good ratings. And then I've just been out talking to people, evangelizing the company, and that has helped. Some of our podcasts like this have gone viral, where folks have heard it and they've said, "Wow, this is really interesting," and that have reached out to us, and so on and so forth. Uh, and then by the end of the year, I was very surprised. We had $5.7 million worth of interest. The SEC only allows companies to raise 5 million in under Reg CF terms. You have to do a lot more paperwork if you want to raise more. So we closed our round at 5 million. We maxed it out. And then we took the 700K or so investors and we said, please wait. We're going to open another round. And a few weeks ago, we opened another round so that they could come in, and we created some special terms for them for this round so that they could get the same deal that they got last time. We call them early bird terms, and I think we're about half sold out of our early bird terms. I can't give too many details here because the SEC says people
Of
have to
course.
go to the platform, read the whole thing.
Yeah.
Uh, but what I can say is that half of our early bird terms are already sold out because we had all this overflow of folks that are trying to get in. So we're
Yeah.
very excited that we have this. We have this now. I have I joke I have a sales team of 2,500 people because we've got 2,500 investors. Minimum check size is $250. Our average is 2,000. We have investors who put in 100K. Um, and so, yeah, we've got all kinds of investors that have decided that they want to back us. Either they like the climate story, or they like the defense story, or they've had personal experience with hydraulic equipment. They don't want to touch it again, don't want to deal with hydraulic oil. We've got professionals who understand that we have a huge market. And when you have a huge market, because you can pick your customer, the chances of failure are a little lower. If versus if you're starting a small market, you either make it or you don't. You have to have the
Yeah.
perfect product. But as I mentioned, we decided not to go with construction because it was a harder problem. We decided to go with oil and gas because it was an easier problem, but also our oil and gas customer is running the systems 24/7. So they're willing to pay more for every little bit of improvement we provide versus someone in construction who's only running it 6 hours a day. So just finding the right customer in a big market can be such an amplifier. So a lot of professionals that have invested have seen that. They've seen the market size and said, okay, if these guys can survive long enough to figure it out, they're going to win, right? So we have a number of those investors as well. It's been fantastic, and I get advice, I get questions. We run webinars for investors to hear what we've accomplished, and then we're putting out updates all the time. So folks that are invested in the company are seeing how much hustle we put in, how much work the engineering team is putting in to make things happen, and that actually has also helped the campaign be so successful.
Yeah. Wow. That's awesome. But a really good opportunity, alternative to traditional finance as well. Do they get any equity, or is it just what's in it for them?
I'm big in equity. Yeah, they're actually
Yeah.
investing in the company. They're owning a piece of the company. I cannot really discuss the terms. They'd have to go to our webpage and then
Okay.
click on invest, and they can read all the terms if they're interested. But your point previously about uh, getting a deal, an early stage deal, is really interesting. You think about what's been announced recently, SpaceX going public at 1.5 trillion, $1.75 trillion. But all the money that was going to be made on that deal, I think, has already been made, right? Companies are staying private longer, and the shares are exchanging hands multiple times before they got to the public. And going public is the cash out event where the early investors can make money. And so the retail investors are on the other side of that equation, right? They're the people that the money is being made off of. So it's not like when Microsoft or Apple went public, that was fairly early and there was a lot of money to be made because there was a lot of runway. SpaceX's valuation says we're going to own all of space, which is unlikely to happen. And it's going to take a long time, much longer than they predict. So in a deal like that, you're showing up so late to the game. Yes, all the risk is gone. You're not going to lose all your money. The most you can lose is half your money, right? In a deal like that, versus an early stage deal like ours, where if the company is not successful, which is possible, you could lose all your money. But if it is successful, the upside is very different.
Mm. Yeah. No, yeah. I love this conversation. I know we're coming short on time. I'd be remiss though if I didn't ask your opinion on AI. How are you guys using it day to day, and how do you see it affecting your industry?
Yeah, so um, I'm a computer engineer by training, and actually, when I was in my undergrad almost over 20 years ago, I did a lot of AI-based projects, and the definition of AI continues to evolve, right? Anything that we can reduce to practice gets a name, and then it's not AI anymore. So previously, uh, chess playing machines were AI. And now we have a name for them. We run these, they're called alpha, beta, minimizing, maximizing trees that you run. So there's a name for that algorithm, right? And then you put dictionaries and so on and so forth. And then there's like machine learning, which is like its own kind of AI. And so there's all these various definitions. But the latest kind of AI that we have that folks are trying that seems very capable has a long tail. And so what that means is that you 80% of the time you get what you want, and then 20% of the time it's not exactly what you want, and then some portion of that it's absolutely not what you want. And so, as an example, companies that are building autonomous forklifts or provide autonomous forklifts as a service typically have a bank of drivers that help the AI systems get unstuck. Now, every time they do that, they train the AI system and gets a little bit better, but you need the human support the human oversight to make sure that the AI systems are working. Where we plan is that we provide systems to companies that are building those kinds of machines. So our systems out of the box are digital. They are force sensing. They provide force feedback out of the box. They provide orientation out of the box. They provide everything that you need to build a digital twin of the system. Once you have a digital twin, then you can have someone who can teleoperate the machine, which I mentioned is like the foundational layer, because the AI is going to have problems. And then on top of that, you can start building more and more autonomy. So we are more like a core element as heavy machines transition from being hydraulic, diesel-based systems to electric drive-by-wire systems to finally teleoperated and autonomous systems. If you start with our hydraulic technology, you get the teleoperation drive-by-wire right out of the box.
Wow.
And then you can build all the other things on top of that.
Yeah. Man, and I'm really fascinated by the progression of robotics and how AI is just skyrocketing so quickly. This was a major theme at the Modex supply chain conference I went to in Atlanta a few weeks ago. Um, I
Yeah, so our embedded software team is completely using AI. So we were using a Chat GPT model. We recently transitioned to Claude, and the team tells me that the productivity has gone up substantially. I'm sure that OpenAI will come up with another model and so on and so forth. But for now, we picked Claude. We're testing it. It's working fine for us. Recently, my software lead told me there's a problem he was going to solve. It would have taken him 2 weeks, and then through vibe, there's a lot of math in there. So vibe coding it and then checking the output, he was able to solve it in 2 hours. So we get those kinds of productivity gains, not all the time, because there's a lot of hardware connected to our software systems. It's not just pure software, but we do get them enough that it's been worthwhile, and our tempo has gone up just like other organizations. Um, on the hardware side, there's a little less of that. Um, there aren't as many great tools doing sort of AI-based design on the mechanical side, but uh, most of our engineers have either gone to MIT or one of the really elite schools here in the Boston area. And so they all know how to code, even if they're mechanical engineers or electrical engineers or what have you. And so they're starting to look at COD as ways to do some simulation and modeling easily. Like if they can't put it into MATLAB, but they're like, hey, I could write a program to do it. I can ask Claude, Claude can write me some code. I can check it if it looks right. then I can run a simulation on it and I can get some early results very quickly. So we're trying to find ways, even though the tools aren't quite as mature in those disciplines, to accelerate the team. You know, we want to be faster for the same amount of spend. Like everybody needs to do that, especially a startup.
Yeah, no, definitely. Great insights. I always ask this question at the end. If there was one takeaway, one thing to implement for a business owner trying to grow and scale, what would you recommend?
I think the most important thing is focus, right? Because when I think about how you go faster in any organization, because scale is about speed, how do you go faster? It's really about focus. And if you're running 3 projects in parallel and you could run them serially, you're better off running them serially because you'll finish the first one, get to revenues, and have the revenue coming in while you're doing your second one. Versus if you run 3 projects in parallel, all 3 of them might finish at the same time, but during that whole time, you have to either raise money or you're not reinvesting in other parts of the business. So doing things serially where possible makes a ton of sense. On the flip side, if there are things you need to learn in the marketplace, then doing them serially doesn't make sense. You want to do as many of those things in parallel because you want your learning to be fast enough. But once you know what it is you're building them sequentially actually helps your business grow faster than doing them in parallel.
Love it. Great way to end it. Focus. And so many good takeaways. I love this conversation. If listeners found it as interesting as I did, Hidden, where's the best way to connect with you?
Yep, they can go to our website, riserobotics.com. If they're interested in owning a piece of the company, they can click on the invest button. Otherwise, they can also find us on LinkedIn, and they can find me on LinkedIn. My name is Hiten Sonpal. You can send me a link, and I'll be happy to connect.
Great. I'll leave that in the show notes. Thank you so much for your time today, Hidden. I really enjoyed this.
Thank you, Pete. This was amazing.
Exit algorithms. Scale smarter. Sell stronger.